A working dog does not refuse a reward for drama. She refuses it when the source is still dirty. Kiva did not bark. She gave me a trained paw tap, dropped a live round into the tray, then refused her reward. On a cold lane, that meant one of two things. My class had failed ammo control, or someone beyond needlehook wash had already turned training into a shooting problem. I had 60 seconds to choose wrong or move. The round hit the trauma tray with a thin, bright metallic sound that cut through the lane like a glass needle. The sound hung there for one extra beat, high and small and wrong, while the whole class waited for the world to admit what it had just done. 12 trainees looked down before they looked at me, which was exactly the wrong order. "Stop hands," I said. Tobin Lark froze over the casualty dummy, one blue-gloved hand still hovering above the fake wound. His gear was too clean, his face too eager, his brain a half-second behind his body. Kiva stood beside the metal table, dark brindle shoulders still, ears forward, reward toy untouched in the dust. Nobody dies during my lunch break. It ruins the paperwork and my appetite. That got their eyes up. I stepped between the tray and the class and moved them with my hands, not with a speech. I moved 2 back and 3 left. Nobody crossed the white cone line. Nobody touched the table. The tactical med bag strap bit into my shoulder as I turned, and the heat came up through my boots like the range had been holding a grudge all morning. Cold Lane 3 was supposed to mean no live fire, no live rounds, no cute exceptions invented by bored people with access to ammunition. We used dummy rounds, inert trainers, moulage, rubber tourniquets, and the kind of plastic nonsense that made civilians feel close to violence without letting violence in the gate. The brass in the tray was not plastic. I looked past the class toward the canyon edge beyond the berm. The sun was white enough to flatten every distance. Marker posts blurred at the edges. Beyond them, needlehook wash sat low and hard in the glare, all stone cuts and dry shadow. "Eyes on me," I said. "Do not turn toward the canyon. Do not pick up anything you dropped. Tobin, step away from the tray and keep your hands visible." He obeyed, pale around the mouth. One boot scraped a half-inch backward, then stopped. His breath came through his nose too fast, loud enough for me to hear over the faint metallic sound of cooling metal. I took one clean step in, then stopped myself. Touching the round bare-handed would make me feel better for 2 seconds and make everything worse after that. Humans are brilliant at contaminating evidence in the name of reassurance. We build whole institutions around it, then act surprised when the paperwork bites. I pulled a folded gauze packet from the side pocket of my med bag, used the wrapper to nudge the round just enough to see the groove. Fine red grit sat packed into the casing like brick dust. It was not range dust, nor the pale powder that lived around the tables and stuck to tape, gloves, and the knees of scared students. This was darker, sharper, the color of old quarry stone north of the wash. Kiva leaned once toward the tray. She moved without the sudden jerk of a lunge or the hesitation of a trick. It was a small, controlled pressure through the lead, as if the source had not finished telling the truth. "Leave it," I told her. She did. Her breath came fast in the hot air, but her feet stayed under her. She offered no theater, not even a low growl in the back of her throat. And none of the mystical dog act people reach for when they want easy answers. Tobin swallowed. "Dr. Quaid, is that—" "Yes." A live round? Yes. Greta Sorn arrived without hurry, which was why she still had command of the range and not merely a badge that said she did. She crossed from the shade line by the safety board, clipboard tucked under one arm, dark glasses hiding whatever part of her face might have been human before liability got to it. "Lane is cold," she said. "It was," I said. Her gaze went to the tray, then to Kiva, then to the trainees I had pushed off the possible line. She was counting heads before she was forming blame. I respected that. I also hated losing time to it. "Did one of your students bring live ammunition onto my cold lane?" "Not proven." That is not an answer. It is the only honest one so far. Greta's mouth tightened. The wind dragged hot dust across the table legs. Somewhere behind us, nylon creaked on a trainee's vest. The live round sat in the tray, too small for the amount of trouble it had earned. Greta stepped closer, but did not touch the metal. "Then prove it is not training contamination." Kiva nosed the air once, low and sharp, toward the canyon. I looked at the red grit again. "Gladly," I said. Greta gave me 6 feet of dirt and the expression of a woman already calculating which form would ruin her afternoon least. It was generous, by range safety standards. Humanity has built empires on less courtesy. "Blind recheck," I said. Tobin looked at the tray, then at Kiva. "You want the dog to run it again?" "I want the dog to tell us what the humans contaminated." Greta's chin lifted a fraction. "No queuing. That is the point. We set the objects on the dirt where the class could see them and where I could not." Greta handled placement. Tobin fetched under her eye. Exactly 6 objects. No extras for imagination to crawl into. A dummy round, a clean casing, a glove, a pouch scrap, an inert training item, and the live source casing from the tray. The dirt held heat like a skillet. Dust clung to every object before Greta took her hand away. The glove lay palm up, faded and stiff. The dummy round looked innocent enough, which was rude of it. The live casing sat among them with its red grit hidden unless you knew where to look. I turned my back. The class went quiet in the ugly way people go quiet when they realize safety is not a slogan. Behind me, Kiva's lead shifted through Greta's hand. Her nails tapped once on packed sand, then settled into the soft scrape of controlled movement. I did not look. Handler cueing is not always a dramatic tug or a whispered command. Sometimes it is a shoulder angle, a breath held too long, a glance that lands on the wrong object. Dogs read us better than we deserve. That is the miracle and the problem. "Search," Greta said. Kiva worked left to right, then broke the line and came back low. I heard wet, rhythmic breaths against the dirt. One object made a faint sound under her nose. The reward toy made a sharp sound once in Tobin's nervous hand before he strangled the noise. Nobody laughed. Kiva passed the glove, passed the dummy, paused at the pouch scrap, then moved on. Her breathing changed near the live casing. Not louder, tighter. Then came 2 taps. They were soft and precise, her paw resting on the dirt beside the brass. Greta said, "Alert." I kept my back turned. "Mark it." Tobin stepped in with the toy. Too quick, too grateful for a clean answer. Kiva turned her head away. That landed harder than the alert. A reward-driven dog refusing a reward is not a mood. It isn't drama. It isn't sulking or loyalty. or intuition, or any other soft nonsense people staple onto animals when they want the world to feel softer. It means the task has not closed the way it should. Kiva nosed past Tobin's hand and bumped the treat pouch on my belt. Once, then again, firmer. Only then did I turn around. Greta's face had not changed, but her fingers had tightened on the clipboard. Explain. Not clean, I said. You said the casing was the source. I said it was a source. Tobin crouched near the tray, not touching the live casing now. Thank God for small miracles and terror as a teaching tool. His eyes tracked from the casing to the rim of the metal tray. He leaned closer. Dr. Quaid, I looked over. There's something caught here. Do not pull it. He stopped with his fingers a half-inch from the tray rim. I moved in with the gauze wrapper still in my hand. A black fiber had snagged in the rolled edge of the metal, short and frayed, barely the length of an ant. 4 millimeters, maybe. Long enough to matter. Small enough for a room full of trained adults to miss. I lifted it with the clean corner of the wrapper and felt the coarse drag of nylon through the thin paper. The fiber rasped like a tiny sawtooth when it came free. A little red grit clung where the fiber had torn. Not much. Enough. Greta saw it. Tobin saw it. That mattered. I did not want a revelation that lived only in my head. Those get people killed and later become very confident testimony. Ammo crate, Greta said. One of her assistants brought the training crate forward. The seal was intact. The dummy count matched. No gap. No broken tag. No clever little student error waiting to be blamed. The class stood in the heat, sweating through their shirts and discovering that innocence feels a lot like fear until somebody proves it. Tobin stared at the fiber. That's from a pouch. Likely. Mine? Maybe. His throat worked. I didn't bring live ammo. I know. Greta looked at me then, and for the first time her skepticism had a seam in it. Kiva had already lost interest in us. She stood at the edge of the object line, nose lifted toward the hard glare beyond Cold Lane 3. The canyon threw back nothing. No sound. No mercy. Just hot dust, mineral stone, and a line of shadow cut thin against the wash. I let the fiber rest on the wrapper beside the casing. This is not a clean find, I said. Kiva gave one short bark toward needlehook wash. The radio in the command hut should have sounded bored. Range radios are happiest when they carry dull things, head counts, water breaks, somebody asking where the extra tape went, civilization pretending it has a schedule. This one came alive with a hiss of static that scraped the walls. Kiva stopped at my left knee. Not sat, not alerted, just held still, head angled toward the speaker like the static had a smell. The voice came through in 3 torn pieces. Quaid, static chewed the name. 1 wounded. No clean route. I knew Devra Cale's voice the way you know a door closing in a house you once lived in. Low, clipped, half the subject gone. Pain made her shorter, not louder. Somewhere in Needlehook Wash, she had a casualty, a blocked exit, and enough sense not to keep transmitting. The hut smelled like warm electronics, faded ink, and recycled dry air. The old air conditioner hummed overhead with the exhausted loyalty of government machinery. A grease pencil map of Mika Draw lay under Greta Soren's hand. White range outside the window. Black lines on paper. Humans do love making danger look flat. I picked up the radio casing. The metal clip was cold against my palm. Devra, say wound type, and count. Nothing answered except static. Greta reached over and turned the volume down one notch. Not off. That mattered. She had heard the same thing I had and did not insult either of us by pretending otherwise. No direct deployment, she said. Needle Hook Wash sits outside the cleared lane boundary. We do not know the line of fire, number of shooters, or source of contamination. Tobin stood by the door with the evidence wrapper still in his gloved hand. The black nylon fiber lay inside it beside the casing. He looked young enough to believe urgency should win every argument. It was a sweet idea, mostly fatal, but sweet. I leaned over the range map. Marker 7 cut across the washmouth in a grease pencil line. Beyond it, the canyon narrowed and bent. Good place for a radio to die. Good place for a person to do the same. If the universe had spare time and a mean streak. Greta tapped the map with her pen. That boundary is not decorative. I am aware. You cross it blind. I turn one casualty into 5. If we wait for a clean picture, Cale runs out of clock. Greta looked at Kiva, then at the live casing in the wrapper. Her jaw moved once. Not fear. Math. The range deviation log came out of the bottom drawer. Blue cover. Thick pages. Numbered. The kind of book designed by people who believed paper could shame chaos into behaving. Greta opened it to the next blank page and set it on the desk between us. If I sign this, she said, the deviation is mine. Yes. If you are wrong, it is still mine. Also, yes. Her pen hovered. I put one sweat-slick palm on the edge of the desk and did not push. Pushing would have been easier. It also would have been useless. Greta Sorn did not need drama. She needed a decision clean enough to survive the hearing after the blood dried. She wrote hard enough for the ballpoint to scrape through the hut. The sound was dry and ugly on the thick paper. A little institutional saw going through everyone's afternoon. Section 4. Deviation was authorized. Limited field movement. Radio intervals. Marker 7 hard stop. 0 response reliance until corridor confirmed. Each line made the range smaller and the risk more real. Tobin watched the pen like it was cutting into him. Do you need me to carry the extra trauma kit? I want your hands, I said. You saw the fiber. You can work pressure if we find Celia. And you are already scared. So we can skip that part. He nodded once. His mouth did not improve, but his feet set under him. Greta tore nothing out. She did not have to. The page stayed in the book, trapped under its own numbering, a neat little monument to future blame. Then she signed across the bottom and pressed the pen so hard the paper dimpled. Outside, the range stayed bright and stupidly calm. Students stood where I had left them, staring at the command hut as if adult supervision might come out carrying an answer. Poor things. Greta keyed the radio. All lanes hold. Cold lane 3 remains frozen. No one moves equipment. No one crosses cone line. Medical command transferring to emergency protocol. She put the radio down and looked at me. 4 people. 1 dog. Radio check when the canyon gives you one. Nobody crosses marker 7 without eyes on Cale. There are 3 of us moving. Then do not pick up tourists. It was fair. Brutal. and efficient. Almost charming if paperwork had ever managed charm without causing a rash. I clipped the radio to my vest, checked the med bag strap across my shoulder, and gave Kiva 2 fingers low by my thigh. She came in tight without pulling. Tobin grabbed the smaller trauma pack and swallowed whatever question had tried to climb out of him. At the door, heat slapped the hut air flat. Needle hook wash waited beyond the white glare, quiet as a held breath. We left the command hut with the range behind us, pretending it was still a training day. That kind of pretending has a short shelf life. The students stayed locked in place under Greta's people, hands visible, gear abandoned where it had fallen. Cold Lane 3 looked smaller from the perimeter, all white cones and metal tables, and one impossible piece of brass changing the shape of the afternoon. Kiva moved at my left, close enough for my fingers to brush the lead without tightening it. Tobin followed on my right, with the small trauma pack riding too high on his shoulders. New gear always sits proudly, until the first bad mile teaches it humility. The ground beyond the lane changed fast. Packed dirt gave way to broken stone and sand that shifted under heavy boots. We scraped, crunched, and slid until our soles caught in a grinding rhythm on the rock. Heat came up through my boots and pushed into my knees. Not dramatic, just steady. The desert was not trying to scare us. It had never needed the extra effort. At the mouth of Needle Hook Wash, half buried in sand, we found the old boundary marker. The paint had faded to a sick pink. One corner leaned out of the dirt like a bad tooth. Fresh tire tracks cut past it, deep enough to show weight, sharp enough to be recent. Tobin crouched too close to the tracks until I put a hand out and stopped him. "Don't kneel in evidence." He backed off, embarrassed and annoyed. Good. Both kept people awake. The tire pattern ran along the low side of the wash, then hooked toward the narrow entrance. Not range vehicles. Wrong width, wrong tread, wrong arrogance. A civilian truck, loaded heavy, moving faster than it should have over ground that punished optimism. I followed the groove with my eyes. Fine red grit sat in the low cuts between stones, darker than the pale range dust. It was the same brick red bite I had seen packed into the casing groove. The same color clung to a scuffed edge of rock where something soft had dragged and torn. I touched the dirt with 2 fingers and rubbed it against my thumb. Dry, sharp, mineral heavy. Tobin watched my hand. That matches the round. It matches where the round traveled. His face tightened around that distinction. The radio coughed against my vest. Greta's voice came in thin but readable. County road crew confirms Sagecut Road checkpoint active. Civilian traffic backed up north. If somebody wanted a shortcut, Needlehook is open on paper. Open on paper, I said, is how people die in person. Tobin looked toward the straight wash floor. Fastest way is down there. He meant well. Terrible defense, historically, but there it was. The straight path ran pale and open along the washbed. It promised speed, which is one of the nicer lies terrain tells people. No cover, no shade, no angle control. Just a bright, flat strip where anyone above us could watch our heads bob through heat shimmer like targets at a fair. The glare was so hard it erased small shadows, and the wash looked less like ground than a white plate waiting to serve us up. Kiva did not like it either. She nosed toward the jagged shadow line where the canyon wall cut a narrow strip of dark across the stone. The lead gave a small, steady pressure. Not panic. Preference. Tobin wiped sweat off his upper lip. Cale said, one wounded. If we take the wall, we lose time. If we take the wash, we lose choices. He glanced at the open path again. His textbook brain wanted a straight line between patient and provider. Lovely in diagrams. Diagrams never shoot back. I pointed to the shadow edge. Cover stops rounds. Concealment only stops optimism. That is not exactly in my civilian paramedic book. Then write it in the margin. He gave me half a laugh, which was better than the argument he had been building. I checked the wall, the tire track, the red grit, the angle of the wash mouth. The Red Spur crew had not planned a firefight with a training class. That made them less theatrical and more dangerous. Criminals trying to escape make ugly. Practical choices. We took the shadow line. It was slower immediately. The canyon wall had broken into ledges and shelves. Mean little steps that rolled under the boot if you trusted them. Sand shifted over stone. Heated nylon from Tobin's pack gave off a faint, burnt smell each time he brushed the wall. Kiva's breath quickened after the first 100 yards. Still controlled, but higher in the chest. I stopped under a thin overhang where the shade was not cool, only less hostile. There is a difference. The world offers discounts, not gifts. Paw check. Kiva lifted her front left foot before I asked twice. Good dog. Better professional than most committee members I had survived. I took the pad in my bare fingers. Warm. Rough. A little too much friction at the front edge. Not yet a blister. Not yet a problem that would stop her. The beginning of one. Nature is kind enough to whisper before it kicks your teeth in. People usually wait for the kicking. Tobin saw my face. She okay? For now. That means no. That means for now. I let Kiva drink 2 swallows from my squeeze bottle and no more. Her eyes tracked the wall, then the wash, then back to the thin seam of shadow ahead. The scent path, if that was what she had, did not run where a human would have drawn it. Good. Human lines had already lied to us once today. We moved on with the canyon swallowing our footsteps. The first shot did not sound like one shot. It cracked once, slapped the right wall, came back thinner, then broke again somewhere behind us. The sonic snap hit my eardrums before my brain had a polite label for it. And the next half-second went bright and hollow, like the canyon had sucked the air out just to throw it back. Needlehook Wash took a simple fact and handed it back as a committee opinion. Very helpful. Very American. In its way. Kiva flattened into the shadow without pulling the lead. Tobin froze with one boot lifted, his body still trying to decide whether fear wanted him tall or small. The route marker ahead of us snapped sideways with a sharp sound, then bounced off stone and skittered into the washbed. Dust lifted from the rock beside it in a tight white puff. Not the wall above our heads. Not center mass. Not our feet. The marker. I pressed my left shoulder into the canyon face and felt grit bite through my sleeve. The stone was rough enough to take skin if I argued with it. Down, I said. Tobin dropped too late, but dropped. Kiva tucked in beside my knee, panting fast, eyes on my hands. The echo kept lying for another 2 seconds. It came off the walls in broken pieces. Left, rear, high, nowhere. each one wrong in a different costume. Tobin turned his head toward the loudest slap of sound, which was exactly how canyons get people killed without even bothering to file an incident report. I caught the back of his vest and pulled him flat against the rock spur. Don't look where the shot sounds like it came from. Look where the dust answers. His eyes snapped to the marker, then to the pale plume still unwinding from the stone beyond it. The shot had come from higher right than the echo wanted us to believe. Maybe 40 yards. Maybe more. Heat shimmer made distance sloppy. I hated sloppy. I slid one hand to the sidearm on my belt, cleared the holster just enough to feel the shape of a choice, then stopped. No positive line. No clean backstop. Behind that angle was broken rock, wash bend, and God knew what else. Firing blind ere that mess would have made me feel busy. Busy is not the same as useful. The Red Spur crew had fired at the route, not our torsos. That was not mercy. That was steering. Move on my hand, I told Tobin. Low to the second spur. He nodded with too much energy and not enough thinking. I pointed him toward a darker notch where the canyon wall folded over itself. Kiva went first because she had better sense than either of us and a lower profile. I followed, half-turned, watching dust instead of sound. Tobin came last and almost made it clean. Almost is a magnificent little word, always showing up right before consequences. His pack clipped a jagged shelf. He twisted away from it, panicked, and drove his water bladder across the rock edge. The tear made no dramatic noise. Just a soft, wet sound against nylon. Then water began to run down his side in a dark line, fast and quiet. It tapped the dirt in a thin, urgent patter, and every drop disappeared like the desert had a mouth. He looked down as if the pack had betrayed him personally. No, 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 leave it. It's leaking. I noticed. The dark patch spread into the dust under him and vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Arizona drank like it had been waiting all day for us to become stupid. A second crack hit the far wall and threw gravel into the open path we had not taken. That answered one question. They wanted us pushed low, then out, then visible. Maybe they needed the wash clear. Maybe they had cargo moving. Maybe they just wanted the strangers with the dog and radio to choose the wrong piece of ground. Motive could wait. Geometry could not. I shoved Tobin into the notch and took the wet pack from him with one hand. Less than half left by weight. Beautiful. Nothing improves a rescue like losing water in a dry canyon while a wounded woman waits somewhere ahead. Kiva nosed toward the wall, then glanced back at the torn bladder. Her breathing had gone tighter. I could smell crushed gravel now, hot mineral dust, and the faint, bitter edge of powder residue drifting down from the rock. I clipped the damaged bladder upright inside Tobin's pack and cinched the hose above the tear. Crude. Temporary. Better than praying, which has an uneven field record. We do not chase the sound, I said. We follow cover. Spur to spur. Short moves. Tobin swallowed hard. They're hurting us. Now you're learning. Kiva shifted toward a narrow cut in the shadow line, not the open wash. I let her have the lead. The canyon had lied once. The dog had not. The shadow line should have made the scent easier. That was the theory. And theories are adorable until heat climbs off stone and turns the air into soup. Kiva moved 10 yards along the canyon wall, nose low, then stopped so sharply the lead went slack between us. She circled back over the same patch of rock. Once, twice. She kept the loops tight and deliberate, refusing to lose the scent. Her nails tapped dryly against the stone, each sound too crisp in the narrow shade. Tobin watched from behind a spur, with one hand clamped over the torn water bladder hose like he could shame it into sealing. "She's overheating," he said. "Maybe confused." Kiva swung her head toward him for a half-second, unimpressed. I shared the sentiment, but had better manners under fire. Mostly. The air smelled of hot dust, heated nylon, and scorched stone. Updrafts rose from the washbed and crawled over the shade seam, dragging scent molecules around like bad witnesses. Kiva was not reading a clean line anymore. None of us were. I crouched beside the spot she kept returning to and kept my body inside the wall's shadow. Heat still came up through it, thinner but present, like the desert had sent an invoice with a discount. The canyon floor was cracked into jagged little plates. In 2 of the cracks, I saw red grit tucked deep where normal range dust would not sit. Same brick color. Same sharp mineral drag when I rubbed it between my thumb and finger. A scuff mark cut across the rock lip above it, pale under fresh abrasion. Something had scraped there and moved fast. Not a boot. Not clean rubber. A loaded pouch or gear edge catching stone. Maybe. I lifted one hand and felt the wind against my damp palm. It ran backward from what the open wash suggested, pulled by the heated wall, sliding scent up and around instead of straight ahead. Kiva circled again, then nosed into the crack and let out a soft breath. Not an answer. A complaint. Fair. I had several. "She's not confused," I said. "The air is—" Tobin stared down the faster path. The washbed bent left, pale and open, and beyond it, a dark slice looked like cover if you had never met a gun. "If we go straight, we can cut 5 minutes. If we go straight, we enter where they want our feet. You know that from grit, scuffing, wind, and a dog refusing to lie for our convenience." He shut his mouth. Good choice. Kiva pawed once at the crack, then looked toward the thin shade seam climbing along the right wall. Her front left foot landed lightly and came up faster than I liked. I saw the tiny hitch. Not dramatic. Worse. In some ways, real problems often arrive politely. I checked the watch, clipped to my vest. We had already lost water. Devra had one wounded. Greta had frozen us at marker 7 unless we had eyes on Cale. The proper decision was to rest the dog. The necessary decision was meaner. 2 minutes, I said. Tobin looked at me. For her, for all of us. I lowered my voice. Kiva, find the dirty line. She worked because she was trained, not because she loved us enough to become magic. That distinction matters, though people keep trying to ruin it with feelings. Kiva followed the shade seam 3 yards, looped back, cut up over a shelf no wider than my boot, then stopped where the canyon wall pinched into a dark notch. From there I could see the fast path Tobin had wanted. A low exit rock sat beyond it, clean angle from high right. 2 fresh chips marked the edge where rounds had struck earlier, pale wounds in the stone. Anyone taking the shortcut would step into that funnel and donate their day to physics. Kiva had not found danger. She had found a lie in the training problem. I touched her shoulder. Heat radiated off her skin through the short brindle coat, dry and hard, as if the canyon had stored itself in her. Good. Her skin twitched under my hand, hot and tight. When I lifted her front left paw, the pad was rough, reddened, with the first bright blister starting at the edge. My fault. Mine cleanly. No committee required. Tobin saw it and went still. Doctor, wrap later. Move now. Ahead. Gravel shifted above the notch. Not echo. Wait. Someone coming down close. Probably done wasting rounds where sound could betray him. I shortened Kiva's lead, put Tobin behind the next spur, and pulled the medbag strap higher on my shoulder. The canyon had stopped pretending this was distant. The gravel above us moved again, then stopped. That was the part I disliked. Falling rock has manners. It keeps going until gravity is satisfied. People stop when they are choosing. I pushed Tobin back with 2 fingers against his vest and lifted my chin toward the spur. He slid behind it, eyes too wide, both hands still fighting the damaged water hose. Kiva stood low at my left, lead shortened, front paw held a little light. I hated that I noticed. I hated more that I did not have time to fix it. A man came down the rock lip in a slide of dust and poor planning. Tuck Avram, though I did not have his name yet. Young enough to think speed was a personality. Sweat cut pale lines through the dirt on his face. He didn't aim for my throat or my weapon, but grabbed for the radio and the bag. Practical, annoying, better than stupid. He hit me hard enough to drive my shoulder into the wall. Stone tore at my sleeve. His breath came hot and sour against my cheek. All dry dust and fear disguised as aggression. His fingers clawed at the radio casing. I trapped it with my elbow and turned my body sideways. Not elegant. Not clean. Just making myself a worse shape to steal from. The medbag strap caught between us. He yanked it with both hands, trying to pull me off balance. The nylon scraped across my vest with a dry, angry sound. My boot ground into the gravel. Fine. People love committing to a bad idea once it has both hands on them. I let the strap slide 2 inches, then dropped my weight and stepped into the loose gravel instead of away from it. My boot skidded. His did too. Mine expected betrayal. His did not. Radio, I snapped. Tobin moved. Not fast like panic. Fast like a task had finally found the right place in his body. Tuck Avram snarled and drove his forearm into my ribs. I got one breath halfway in and lost the rest. He grabbed the medbag higher, twisting the strap across my chest. Cover stops rounds. Concealment only stops optimism. Neither helps when a sweaty idiot is trying to turn your own gear into a leash. Kiva moved without taking the fight for me. Good dog. Smarter than half the action movies mankind keeps producing as evidence against itself. She cut behind Tuck's outside leg and barked once. Short and hard. Not a threat display. Not theater. Just a sudden fact in a place his balance had not budgeted for. He flinched away from teeth that were not on him, shifted weight to the wrong foot, and the gravel folded under him. I twisted with the strap. Pain lit through my left wrist, sharp and electric, the kind that makes the whole arm briefly vote to resign. Rock shifted under us with a gritty sound, and I dragged one breath in through my teeth. I ignored the vote. Democracy has limits in a canyon. The strap dragged across the heel of my hand, and I used it to turn his shoulders toward the wall instead of toward Tobin. Tuck's knee banged stone. His grip loosened. Tobin ducked in, grabbed the radio cord and the side handle of the med bag, and hauled both back behind the spur with a grunt that sounded older than 24. Tuck swung once, ugly and wide. His knuckles scraped my jaw. More insult than damage. I put my forearm between us and drove him off the narrow lip, with his own stumble doing most of the work. He caught himself 3 feet down on a lower shelf, breathing like a broken pump. One hand went to his knee, the other came up empty, which was the only kind of hand I wanted from him. I drew down enough to make the boundary clear, not enough to pretend the backstop had improved. The angle behind him was still bad. Broken rock, blind bend, possible Devra, possible Celia, possible universe laughing into its sleeve. I kept my finger indexed and my mouth shut for a half second. He looked at Kiva, then at me, then at Tobin holding the radio and medbag, like he had stolen fire from the gods, and was very disappointed by the wait. "Go," I said. Tuck went. Not bravely. Not theatrically. He scrambled down and back through the rock seam, boots scattering gravel until the canyon swallowed the sound. My wrist throbbed in hard little pulses. I flexed my fingers. They moved. They hated me, but they moved. Tobin stared at the radio in his hands. "I got it." "You did." Kiva leaned against my leg for a half second, breathing hot. I looked ahead. The notch narrowed, then opened into a strip of deeper shade. Now let's make that worth something. The deeper shade was not mercy. It was a narrow strip of rock where the sun had not yet finished its work. Devra Cale sat inside it with her back against the wall. One boot braced, one hand on a rifle. She was not waving around for drama. That alone told me she was still Devra. Celia Norr lay beside her with a pressure dressing jammed high on her thigh and a face gone gray under the dust. Her lips moved once. No sound came out. Bad sign. Not the worst sign. Medicine loves its little ranking systems, as if organizing dread makes it less rude. Devra turned her head when she saw us. One side of her face was streaked with sweat and grit. Her bad ear was toward the wall. Good ear toward the wash. "Took scenic route," she said. Guide was terrible. Her mouth twitched. That was the reunion. Anyone waiting for violins would have dehydrated before the second chorus. Tobin dropped to his knees beside Celia without asking for applause. He looked once at the dressing, once at Celia's color, then put both hands exactly where they needed to be. The cloth under his palms was heavy and dark, slick with sweat and blood, but not pouring. Good. Ugly, but good. A copper smell threaded through the hot dust and salty sweat, faint enough to stay real and strong enough to remind every animal part of the brain what was leaking. He did not start naming arteries at the sky. He did not narrate his own competence. Tiny miracles do happen, apparently, mostly under duress. "Pressure holding," he said. "Keep it. On it." That was all. Beautiful. I nearly forgave him for the water bladder. Nearly. I am not made of sunshine. I checked Celia's pulse, her skin, her breathing. Fast. Shallow. Heat and blood loss had stripped her down to essentials. There would be no clever field miracles here. No dramatic procedures or magic needles pulled from the pocket of television medicine. She needed pressure, shade, fluids we barely had, and movement to a place where adults with more gear could continue disappointing death. Devra nodded toward the wash with her chin. 2 shooters I saw, maybe 3, not trying to close, trying to keep exits dirty. Red spur crew, cargo boxes, civilian truck, stupid route. Stupid armed route, I said. Important distinction. Kiva stood beside me, weight off her front left paw now. Not enough for Tobin to notice while working. Enough for me to feel the gilt hook under my ribs and pull. I took her foot in my hand. The pad was worse than it had been 10 minutes ago. Dry, hot. The first blister raised bright along the rough edge. She let me lift it without complaint, which made me feel worse, because working dogs do not write incident reports. They just keep giving you the next chance to fail them politely. I pulled a strip of dark gray paw wrap from the side pocket of the med bag. My left wrist barked when I tore it loose. I used my teeth for the last bit because civilization had not followed us this far into the wash. The wrap rasped around her pad, snug but not tight, coarse against my fingertips. Kiva watched my face while I worked, breathing fast, trusting me with a paw I had already spent too hard. Sorry, I told her. Devra heard it. Of course she did. Dog gets apology. I get sarcasm. You're harder to impress. Always was. Tobin did not look up. Dressing still holding. His voice had dropped. No textbook shield. Just the job. I clicked the med kit shut with one hand and felt the wrist complain again. Devra shifted her shoulder against the wall and looked past me toward the bend we had almost taken earlier. Her eyes narrowed. She was listening to the canyon like it owed her money. I called left before, she said. Radio ate half of it. No. Echo lied. She swallowed. Dry and painful. Not left. Echo lied. High right. Shadow shelf. I followed her gaze. Above the strip of shade, the wall broke into a slanted shelf that looked too narrow until you noticed where the dust had not settled. A line of use. Small. Ugly. Real. The kind of path people take when they do not want to be seen and do not care who has to crawl after them. Kiva lifted her wrapped paw and set it down carefully. Her nose angled toward the same shelf. Not eager. Not fresh. Willing. I looked at Tobin. Can she move? He glanced at Celia. Then at me. With help. Slow. I keep pressure. Devra can stand. Won't enjoy it. None of us bought the enjoyment package. A rock made a sharp sound somewhere beyond the high right shelf. Not close yet. Close enough to matter. I tightened Kiva's lead, checked the radio, and took the last small drink in the bottle without swallowing much of it. One final search, I said. Kiva looked toward the shadow shelf. The canyon waited for our answer. Kiva took the shadow shelf like she understood the insult of it. Narrow stone, bad footing, heat rising even where the sun could not hit straight. Her taped front paw sounded softer than the others, a dry little brush against rock. But she kept her nose working along the seam Devra had marked. Not eager, not heroic, working. There is a difference. And people keep trying to blur it because reality refuses to sell plush toys. Devra moved behind me with one hand on the wall and the other near Celia's shoulder. Tobin stayed low beside Celia, keeping pressure with both hands while she shuffled one bad step at a time between them. Nobody looked elegant. Good. Elegant gets people killed and then praised at memorials. Ahead, the shelf bent toward a notch above Sagecut Road. I heard an engine below. Then the scrape of something heavy being dragged. Cargo boxes. Red Spur crew had reached the same answer we had, just from the criminal side of the math. Kiva stopped, nose pointed down and right. I stopped with her. 2 men stood near the lower cut, one by the truck bed, one behind a rock fan that gave him cover from the road but left his backstop against a sandstone wall. Bless his poor tactical judgment. Rare gift. Under the circumstances. They're moving the boxes, Devra said. Can they see us? Not yet. High angle buys us 10 seconds. 10 seconds is a whole career when nobody wastes it. I looked at Tobin. When I move, you move Celia to the notch. Do not look for permission twice. Got it. His voice was thin, but his hands stayed steady. Kiva pulled 1 careful inch toward the shelf edge, then checked herself. The scent trail ran across the narrowest part, down to a stone lip that opened toward the road. Her paw wrap had gone dusty gray. A tiny red mark showed where the blister had pressed through. My fault moved with us, quiet and well-trained. The man near the rock fan lifted his weapon toward the lower wash. Not us. He wanted the exit clear before response locked it. He did not want a murder charge. He did not want witnesses either. Humans contain multitudes, most of them stupid. A distant heavy sound rolled over the road. Response vehicles. Too far to save us. Close enough to make the crew panic. The man by the truck shouted something I could not make out. The other one turned, saw movement above him, and swung toward the shelf. For once, the backstop was honest. I fired into the stone face behind his angle, not into him. The crack slammed off the canyon wall and threw chips across his shoulder line. He flinched, but did not break. He ducked hard, came up wrong, and brought the weapon back toward the shelf where Celia was trying to breathe through a mouth full of dust. I saw his front sight lift. I saw Devra pull Celia down by the shoulder strap. A fan of rock dust burst from the shelf edge and blew across my eyes, gritty and hot, turning the world into a pale smear. I blinked once and gave myself no second try. Wind angled left through the notch. Backstop, still stone. If he committed to the shot, the third round would have to be his, not the rock behind him. A second shot hit the same safe face lower, close enough to tell him the shelf had a vote. He stepped forward again, anyway. Stupid hope dragging him by the teeth. Somewhere below, sirens broke through the canyon's echo and came up hard from Sagecut Road. Real sirens. Tires on gravel. Doors not yet open, but coming. That sound did what my warning shots had not quite done. It made the future visible. He fell back from the rock fan, cursing, and the man by the truck abandoned 1 cargo box like it had suddenly become philosophical. Move, I said. Devra hauled Celia through the notch. Tobin kept 1 hand pressed to the dressing and used the other to guide her hip around the stone. Celia made 1 small sound, then bit it off. Kiva pushed forward, limping now, but still taking the scent line. I hated every step and followed anyway. The corridor opened by inches, shelf, notch, slanted rock. Then a hard drop to a gravel apron beside Sagecut Road. Not clean. Open enough. Another shot from below hit high and wrong. Stone dust raining over my shoulder. I kept us behind the shelf until Devra and Tobin got Celia to the apron. Then the radios finally found the world again. Quaid. This is Dre. Hold position. Perimeter, entering Sagecut from south. Corridor open, I said. Casualty out. Do not crowd the shelf. Ansel Dre's response team arrived after the hard part was over, which is the traditional time for official rescue to look impressive in reports. Their vehicles hit the road in a cough of dust. Doors opening. Voices sharp. Weapons angled where they belonged. They locked the washmouth and forced the Red Spur crew down instead of through. Tobin lowered Celia onto a blanket and kept pressure until another medic took over. Devra sank down beside the tire track and looked at Kiva. Steak and apology, she rasped. Kiva gets the steak, I said. You get the review. Greta arrived 10 minutes later with a range log under one arm and her face set into the calm of a woman who had already read the future and found it full of meetings. I handed her the clear evidence pouch. The live round rested inside it. Small and absurd. Red grit still packed into the casing groove. The plastic caught the sun and made the brass look preserved, as if the day had been shrunk down into one ugly little museum piece. Through the pouch, the casing pressed a dry weight into my palm, heavier than brass had any right to feel. Greta looked at Kiva's wrapped paw, then at my swollen wrist. 30-day live lane instruction hold, she said. Pending review. Mine? Yours. Mine goes formal. It was fair, brutal, and efficient. Almost charming if paperwork had ever managed charm without causing a rash. The sun stayed white. No rain came to wash the dust away. I put one hand on Kiva's shoulder and watched the evidence pouch disappear into Greta's kit, slow enough for the seal to click in my head. The story had started with one live round in a tray. It ended with everybody alive enough to answer for it.